Built in the early 20th century, shipped to British Honduras from Canada, reassembled at this prime seafront location in the Fort George neighborhood, and stood as an iconic landmark in the old capital, the Chateau Caribbean is no more. The upper flat of the concrete and wooden structure, built entirely from cedar, went up in smoke on Sunday morning.
I was just outside and I smelled the smoke, and when I looked up I smelled just smoke, no flames. I walked out on the street and I saw Mr. Liu and his staff, doing what they needed to do, and I immediately woke up my neighbor or got them out, and we moved the vehicles and then kind of got the Radisson prepared. And by this time now, you could hear the sirens from the fire department.
At the scene of the inferno, the responding firemen observed that the edifice was being consumed rather quickly. The symbolic timber construction had survived both the hurricanes of 1931 and 1961 before being named the Holden Memorial Hospital. Time was not in favor of the fire department.
On arrival, the upper section, the upstairs section of a three-story structure was engulfed in flames. The fire department immediately went into operations and tried to extinguish the fire. As well, our exercise fireball was put in place, and off-duty personnel was called out to the scene so that we can effectively control and extinguish the fire.
Varying accounts suggest that personnel from the National Fire Service, notwithstanding specific constraints on the ground, did their best to save the building.
They worked very, very hard, the fire department. But however you look at it, it was really, really unfortunate for Mr. and Mrs. Liu, because that was truly the greatest loss, because they were the owners, and as tourism colleagues in the industry for many, many, many years, it was an institution, that building. And of course, before tourism, there was another institution there. And I think the Chateau Caribbean was one of the oldest buildings still, was one of the oldest buildings in Belize City.
At the time of its assembly in the early 1900s, the building was owned by the Biddle family and was appraised as the most expensive home built during that era. The elderly Asian couple who later owned the property has not only lost a lifelong investment, but Belize City has also lost a significant part of its colonial patrimony.
The investigation is in its preliminary stage. I have no information about what caused the fire from the investigator. I will allow them to do their work, and then I will be able to say, based on the information from them, what may have caused the fire. At this time, I do not know.
Jim Scott, the general manager of the adjacent hotel and next-door neighbor, quickly summoned his staff at the Radisson, and plans were set in motion to safeguard their building.
We had to mitigate as much risk as we could for the residents where I live, and of course the Radisson Fort George. The breeze was coming out of the northwest. It shifted a little bit here and there, created a ton of ash, hot flaming embers that were kind of being dispersed on the eastern front of the Radisson by the pool and the stone grill. So, we had a lot of staff. We called a lot of people who were home on that Sunday and just trying to mitigate risk. Fortunately, there's been a lot of rain in the city lately, so rooftops were wet, and our thatch roof and stuff, we were putting hoses up there on the roof, and but it really an unfortunate situation for all of us as neighbors, Mr. and Mrs. Liu, all the staff who have worked there for so many years.
Some of those employees, we understand, have been there since 1986. The historic location also appeared in the 1980 film Dogs of War, starring Christopher Walken. More recently, it was featured as part of the Downtown Rejuvenation Project. The contention in the wake of the disaster is the timeliness of the fire department's response.
To be fair, it took firefighter almost 15 hours to extinguish the fire. I don't know where you get 2 hours from. Our last team came in almost midnight from that scene, yeah, with all these hot spots. Fire are easy to start, but not easily controlled. I am sure from the footage I'm seeing so far on Love FM that thousands of gallons of water from both 2 units was being discharged consistently, and the flame continued to burn vigorously. It's just the amount of fuel load, the type of structure and the amount of fuel load. It's a huge wooden structure, 3-story, with used in some areas as hotels. So there is a lot of Class A material to sustain fire, to sustain tremendous fire, burning of fire.
There were a few technical glitches here and there with some of the fire equipment. I'm sure some of those lads wish they had some new stuff, but you know, it's like when the Paslow building went up. You know, there's only so much you could contain, and I think those guys know their business better than me. But you're not just trying to contain a fire, but you're also trying to mitigate risk of other people, businesses and residents. So they really jammed. They really jammed.
Reporting for News 5, I am Isani, Cayetano.